Hello, fellow socialites. Just kidding. But as you may have guessed from the title of this video, I am going to talk about growing your social media presence as an artist. I will mainly be focusing on Instagram, but I think that a lot of the advice I'm going to provide is pretty applicable to other platforms as well. Before I jump into the discussion, in today's video, I will be working on a simple gouache portrait in one of my old sketchbooks. Supplies I used, as always, will be listed down in the description. As you watch the video, you'll see that for the majority of the portrait, I mainly used pretty much just one coral paint color with small hints of white and blue. Then towards the very end, I use a little bit of a dark purple color for an extra bit of contrast. But I try to keep my color palette as limited as possible because I feel like it's a great example of just showing that you don't necessarily need a huge range of colors or really even a vast color theory knowledge in order to achieve a certain level of portrait rendering. Also, the advice I'm providing today is just what I've gathered in my own experience. There is no real secret formula in growing your audience, and nothing is truly guaranteed. Plus, the amount of followers you have does not equate to the value or quality of your work. While there are tons of benefits to growing an online presence, such as getting noticed by potential brands / clients and just general exposure to a wider audience. However, I think it's important to note that there are tons of artists that I follow or have come across that have amazing work and successful careers, but have relatively small social media followings. It really just depends on what you think will be the most beneficial to you and where you want to put your energy. Because some artists, social media is not that important to them, whereas someone like me, I find that social media to be pretty integral to my success. So now with that out of the way, let's get on to the advice. Tip number 1, quality posts. If you're a digital artist, you can simply just post your work as is, which makes it pretty straightforward. However, if you're a traditional media artist like myself, it's not necessarily quite that simple. In the past, I used to scan my illustrations and then edit them and then post them to my social media platforms, which definitely provides the most clear image. But in the last few years, I have taken the lay flat approach instead. This means I am photographing my work top down with an environment / setting. I have chosen to go this route for a number of reasons. First, I find it more interesting to look at. 2, it's faster and more accessible to me than having to bust out my scanner whenever I want to post something. 3, it gives me the opportunity to include cute props and sometimes the art supplies that I use in the illustration in the photo. And then lastly, presenting my work this way also actually makes it more difficult for people to steal and make reproductions of. I pretty much photograph all my work with my phone and or iPad, so you don't necessarily need a fancy DSLR camera. The key, I think, is to have good lighting and to lightly edit the photos to get it as close to what it looks like in real life. The majority of the time, I just photograph during the middle of the day right under my bedroom window. That way I don't need to have a fancy photo light setup, and I honestly find that natural light looks the best anyways. As for editing the photos, there's tons of free photo editing apps out there. I personally use Color Story, where I will adjust the levels, contrast, saturation, etc. And if you're a digital artist that likes lay flats, you can also do it as well. I've actually done them for the few digital pieces I've made as well. I just photograph my iPad and then I edit my digital post right on top of it. Whichever approach you decide to go, the key is you want your work to speak for itself. There's a lot of content out there competing for people's attention. So if you have a poorly lit image or it's not very clear, it's pretty likely that people are just going to skip over it and move on to the next one. My second piece of advice is to be consistent. If you have a relatively small following and you're really wanting to focus on growing, consistently posting, I think, will make a really big difference. Because like I just said, there are a lot of great artists out there. And if you only post once a month, for example, it's possible that even people who liked your work and followed you, they might kind of just forget who you are. The unfortunate thing about social media is that it favors people who are on it fairly frequently. So if you disappear for long periods of time, the algorithm may work against you as well. Of course, you still want to be posting quality content and you don't want to overwork yourself either. So for me, I typically try to post 2 to 3 times a week on my Instagram feed. Obviously, that doesn't always happen for one reason or another, but that is my ideal posting schedule. And I find that personally to be a healthy amount for my audience and the amount of content that I can typically manage to produce. And the reason why I say 2 to 3 times a week and not every day or something like that is because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with maintaining that much content, nor do you want to spam your audience and potentially annoy them. I do, however, try to post a couple stories a day to my Instagram, whether it be works in progress shots, personal stuff, polls, etc. That way it's just like a nice little reminder to my audience of my existence, and then also signals to the platform that I'm still actively using it. My third piece of advice is to have variety. Now, I understand that everyone's art practice and the amount of time they have to dedicate to social media and their art is going to be different. Someone who primarily works on large-scale oil paintings is likely to have a much lower output than someone who, say, primarily works with graphite pencil and a small sketchbook. And someone who is in school or works a day job or has to take care of kids is going to have a different output versus someone who is able to dedicate all of their time to be a full-time artist. But you don't necessarily need to be posting fully finished masterpieces for all your posts. Like I said, you can also include works in progress, sketches, photos of your studio space, really anything that you think would be related to your art practice. I also think that changing up your content is also really beneficial than having content that just all feels the same. And what I mean by that is you want to give new reasons for your audience to engage with your content. With Instagram and most social media platforms, the more people interact with your posts, meaning likes, comments, and shares, the better reach it's going to have, thus making the post more successful because it's, being seen by more people. If all of your posts feel very similar, eventually your audience may run out of things to say about it. Thus, you may get fewer likes and less people seeing the content. If you're familiar with my work, you may notice that I mainly illustrate women and generally have a common aesthetic that's carried throughout most of my work. However, I think the variety that I tend to lean into is the fact that I work with many different mediums. This allows me to change up from post to post, whether I'm working with watercolors, gouache, markers, etc. Not only does this showcase my versatility as an artist, but it also allows my audience new insights into my work and hopefully yields a range of different comments. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be a multidisciplinary artist in order to show different types of posts. Another option to explore is different interests and things that inspire you or influence you. For example, I love showcasing contemporary fashion and beauty trends, but I also really love mythical and fantasy themes, and sometimes I'll draw inspiration from different eras as well. This allows me to hit different niches and interests within my following. And while I take a lot of pride in being able to show, a lot of original content that my audience is interested in, I also have a lot of fun doing fan art as well. And I think that doing fan art it gives your current followers an idea of the types of things you're into, while also potentially reaching new people who happen to be fans of the show or movie that you're doing fan art for. And I also find that doing fan art also gives your audience a bit more insight into the type of person you are, and it allows them to connect with you on a personal level and potentially invites, conversation, which perfectly leads up into my next tip. Tip number 4, be active and connect with others. Like I had mentioned earlier, Instagram and social media platforms want people to spend time on the app. So if your post is getting a lot of engagement, it'll get pushed to the top of your followers' feed. A good way of boosting that engagement is to reply back to comments being made on your posts. Apparently, it's particularly crucial within that first hour of it being posted. So not only is it creating more activity on your post, but you're also putting in the effort to give thanks to your followers and connect with them. Other things that you can take advantage of is the features within the platform. So with Instagram, you can use their stories feature. You can choose to post photos, short videos, create polls, ask questions, live streams, etc. This also creates activity on your account and gives new ways for your audience to interact with you. I think that while producing and showcasing quality artwork is very important as an artist, I also think that it makes a big difference when you find ways to show your followers who you are as a person. Giving them insight into your process or your interests allows them to get to know you on a personal level, and I think going that extra mile really makes you relatable and more memorable. Because while we want our work to speak for itself, if your audience has a level of investment in you as a person and as an artist, it's pretty likely that they'll be more active and a more dedicated follower. Of course, you don't have to reveal everything about yourself, and I encourage you to only put forth what you feel most comfortable with. And I really want to stress that what you choose to show your audience should still be authentic to who you are. Don't try to force anything for the sake of being a quote-unquote influencer or online personality. Another key factor that I think has made a difference for me as an artist on social media is not only interacting with my audience, but also with fellow artists. Again, the thing about creating connection with someone is you want it to be genuine. I want to put a very big emphasis on what I'm about to say. Please do not spam, self-promote, or try to force yourself onto other artists. There have been numerous occasions when I see someone comment on another artist's post promoting their own page, or tagging a dozen artists on their posts when there's no real relation or reason to be tagging them, or blatantly asking for a shout out. The list goes on. And I'm assuming that people who use these tactics think that trying to piggyback off of another artist's success is a shortcut into getting more exposure. But in reality, it just comes off as disingenuous and desperate. If you happen to be someone who does this or has done this, I'm not saying you're a bad person or that you can't achieve success. But what I want to stress is that this is, in my personal opinion, not the right way of trying to connect with somebody. I have been very fortunate to have made many art friends through social media, and how these connections are made is just typically from mutually following each other and interacting with each other's posts. If there's an artist that I like, I'll take the effort to like and comment on their post, and when I say comment, I will compliment their work, not promote myself or ask to be friends. And when I choose to show support for fellow artists, I'm not doing it with the expectation that they're also going to engage with my work. However, it is a very pleasant surprise if they do. And I think it's good to just go about it as good karma. The energy and positivity that you put forth will eventually make its way back to you. So, now that we've discussed connecting with your followers and fellow artists, my last piece of advice is to join in on art challenges. This is a great way for you to connect with the art community as a whole, as well as gain more exposure for your artwork. When I began participating in Inktober during 2017, that was when my Instagram audience really began to grow. Because not only was I joining in on a big art community challenge that a lot of people were paying attention to, I was also producing new artwork almost every day. Of course, Inktober is not the only art challenge that you can join in on. There are tons of other monthly challenges like Mermay or Huevember, but there's also weekly ones and different trends that spontaneously pop up, such as the Tune Me challenge or the 6 Fan Arts challenge. And another popular trend that I'm sure you're familiar with is the Draw This in Your Style challenge, which many different artists host, where they create an illustration or a character and invite you to interpret in your own way. The great thing about participating in someone else's Draw This in Your Style event is that they might share your piece to their audience and new people can discover you. Or if you choose to host your own event, when other artists participate, it'll also create like a domino effect and potentially garner you many new followers as well. So both ways, it's a win-win. Plus, I find art challenges and trends to be a great way to kickstart your inspiration or motivation, especially if you're in an art block. But ultimately, I personally really enjoy participating in these types of events because I genuinely find them really fun and I like contributing and being active in the online art community. So that pretty much brings us to the end of my advice on growing your Instagram following as an artist. You, of course, are your own person and artist, and how you choose to showcase yourself and your work is ultimately up to you. At the end of the day, social media has many pros, but it also has its cons as well. So try to be kind to yourself and go at your own pace. During these times, especially, I think it's important to do whatever makes you feel most comfortable. And if you think that social media or creating content is making you really stressed out, then just step back and take a break. And regardless of where you're at, I hope that this video was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a good one. Bye.